All right, so let's learn about narcissists in this video and how they teach you about who they are from their body language. So, did you know that what we say is actually only 7% of our communication? That's right. Tone of voice, tone of voice is actually 38% of our communication, and body language, body language is the other 55% of what we actually say. So when we are expressing ourselves, more than half of what we say is coming from our body language. So that means when we are listening or watching narcissists, they're saying a lot from their body language. All right, so I've got 6 telltale signs. So grab your notepad, grab your pen. You are not going to want to miss out on these 6 telltale signs. And I'm going to do them in reverse order from number 6 to number 1 so that you stay tuned all the way till the end. Ready? Let's go. Number 6. Number 6 is they have trouble making eye contact with people. They don't look up. They don't look at you. They have trouble while they're talking to you actually looking at you. Now, I know that a lot of you are from other cultures. Sometimes this is a cultural thing. So you do have to take into account different cultures. Sometimes it's actually disrespectful to look at people in the eye, depending on the culture that they're in. So do take that into account as well. Sometimes people are fearful of others as well. So you do have to kind of look at this as a whole before all the haters come rushing in. Just make sure that you do understand that you do have to look at this as a whole. Okay. So that's number 6. You ready for number 5? All right. Number 5 is that they're just not interested in new people in general. They just, they kind of like disinterested in even meeting new people. And they can't get themselves to like get up off the couch. They can't get themselves to come over unless the person can do something for them. Then maybe they're animated, right? They're in a situation where maybe a new person comes into the room, or maybe they come into the room and there's other people there that they haven't met before, and they just really don't want to meet new people unless, maybe they can do something for them. And again, you have to kind of take all of these as a whole because, of course, there are people out there that might have social anxiety or, have other issues, right? But this is just kind of taken together. Got it? Okay. So that's number 5. Number 4. Number 4 is much more subtle. Number 4 is just that silent resentment. And I've been there. I have felt this. There's this silent resentment when their target, that person that they're with, that person, it might be your spouse, it might be your business partner, it might be that person, but the one who's like that target, the person that they're dealing with right now, it's probably you who's watching because you're the one who's watching, is interacting with other people. So you are in a social situation and you're enjoying yourself and you're feeling that silent resentment. They are so upset with you because you're having fun, because you're talking to other people. They cannot stand the fact that you are interacting with others. You know that later on you're going to pay for it. And this is the kind of thing that they do like at holidays, especially. And by the way, I have a whole video on why narcissists ruin holidays. And if you want to check that out, you can definitely check that out because, this is like one of the things, and you just kind of feel that underlying sort of seething. And you might get like these little like quips, you might get these little like comments, these little like subtle devaluing, like, oh, why do you got to go do and say that? Or how come you're eating that way? Or why do you look like that? Who are you talking to? Or they don't want to hear about that. There's like these little things that are happening. And so that you feel this silent sort of resentment, going on there. Okay. So that's number 4. You ready for the next one? All right. So the next one is that they're just like closed off, right? They're just closed off, maybe like folded arms, maybe like sitting away from others. Maybe they're like facing the door. They're just like disinterested to show others that, they're not interested in you. I mean, a lot of times, by the way, if you want to know if an agreement is going to stick, you should look to see how somebody is facing, because if they're looking at you but they're facing toward the door, they're not necessarily engaged with you. They might be kind of half out the door. They might be sort of like not really actually committing to whatever it is that they may even be saying that they're committing to. And then down the road, you might find that that agreement didn't actually hold together and didn't actually stick. And you're wondering why, because they said that they would, and that's why, because you didn't read the body language. You didn't know to read the body language that they weren't actually sticking. So if you see that they're closed off, or you see that they're sitting and facing away like that, that might show that they're kind of narcissistic or not actually engaged in the situation. Okay. So that's the next one. And if I'm on track so far and you've seen some of these, give me an on track in the comments below. All right. Next one is, I know you guys have seen this too. I have definitely seen this from narcissistic people. They actually ask you a question, like you're in a social situation, and they say, oh, how did you come to have this happen to you? Or how is it going with your business or whatever? And you start to answer them, and then they don't even listen for your answer. You're halfway through the sentence and they're like, off, doing something else, or they see someone else. They don't even say, excuse me. They leave, they start looking at their phone, and they're not engaged. Like they don't even care enough to hear the rest of what you're saying. And, maybe a better source of supply came along, or whatever. And there you are. You're just sort of like, oh, yeah, well, never mind then. That's, another one. Like they're just kind of like inconsiderate. Especially if a better source of supply comes along. So that's the next one. And if you want to know what number 1 is, you got to make sure you stick with it. Ready? Ready for number 1? Okay. Number 1 is they often have more of a distance. They keep a distance. They actually have more physical proximity than others do in conversation. And again, sort of like the trouble with making eye contact, you do want to take into account different countries, different cultures, because obviously certain cultures stand closer than others. So you do want to think about that. But if you are in the same culture and you kind of know what the social norms are in your particular culture, narcissistic people do tend to stand a little further away from each other than other people do. So those are some telltale signs of narcissistic body language. All right. So how to spot narcissists from their body language. By the end of this video, I'm going to give you 6 telltale signs. We know that narcissists are liars. All right. But they say that only 7% of our communication is actually the words coming out of our mouths. So what's going on with the other 93%, right? The other 93% of our language is our tone, it's body language, it's how we say things, it's the gestures, it's how we touch our face, it's eye contact, it's all sorts of things that is going on while we're actually talking. You know, narcissists are actually very attuned to that sort of thing. I mean, they look at tone, they listen to for slights in any way, because you know they are so hypersensitive and hypersensitive to criticism. When you are interacting with narcissists or somebody who could be a narcissist, these are the types of things that you're going to want to be looking at as well. And, you know, looking to see if somebody is a liar, looking to see if somebody is somebody that you should be trusting in any kind of a situation, whether it's going to be a business situation, a personal situation with somebody you want to date, somebody you want to do business with, right? Number one is, does this person make eye contact with you? You know, are they shifty? I've noticed this even when, you know, you're just asking the person a question. I recently just had a situation where I knew the person was a good person and it was a business relationship that I was in, and I knew that the person had a good heart. But you know, I kept trying to get this person to tell me where we stood on getting certain things done. And every time I would ask this person a question, you know, they would not really quite give me a good answer. Now, the things that I'm giving you here, I'm just telling you, taken together, are probably a narcissist, not one thing alone. So if this person has trouble making eye contact with you, plus the other 5 signs that I'm going to give you here, then you know you might want to think about whether or not this person is a narcissist. Okay, so number one is, do they have trouble making eye contact with you when you're having a conversation with them? That's number one. Number two, are they interested in meeting new people, or do they, you know, kind of sit back? Is there just sort of like this feeling of boiling around them? You just kind of get this sense of resentment. I know a lot of times with narcissists, they kind of slink away from other people. You get that feeling that they're not interested in being around new people or people in general, unless the person can do something for them, you know, so they're just kind of not interested in being around people. Number three is there's that silent resentment. You can just kind of feel that. You just feel that resentment around them, that passive aggression. You can feel that seethingness. They're kind of turned away. They often are turned away from other people. You can sort of see that. They don't make eye contact. And a lot of times when they are answering a question, you know, they'll say yes, but their head is saying no, or something like that. Like there's incongruence with what the words that are coming out of their mouth and their body language. So if you see incongruence with the words coming out of their mouth and what they're saying, then they're probably lying. So if you see somebody saying yes, but they're going like this, like absolutely, absolutely, then they're probably lying. Or if they're turned away like this
toward the door while they're listening to you, they're probably not engaged in listening to you at all. Or they start to ask you a question, or you even start to talk to them, and halfway through they're looking at their phone or they're looking away and they're not engaged. Next is they're closed off, sit facing away. Oftentimes their arms are folded, legs may be closed, arms closed, definitely disinterested face. The next one is that if something where obviously their empathy is required. Most people would be like, oh my gosh, or wow, they don't express anything like that. They just a facial movement or body movement at all. Maybe they don't even say anything. And they even need to be reminded to say something like, oh, did you just hear that? Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, that's terrible. Or, they say nothing at all. The next one is they might ask a question and then they don't even wait for an answer. They just start talking to somebody else who might be a better source of supply. They just move away, or they just walk away while you're in the middle of talking completely. If any of you guys have seen any of these so far, give me an I've seen it in the comments, or any that you guys have seen. So, and by the way, one of the things that you can tell if somebody's lying is how they touch their face. So I'm giving you guys a couple of extra ones in here, by the way. So, you can tell if somebody's lying by how they touch their face. And a lot of these, by the way, are in my body language course, how to tell if somebody's a narcissist by their body language, or how you can become powerful against a narcissist by your body language. It's pretty powerful because body language is so much more powerful than what you think. And then the last one is narcissists often keep much more of a distance, much more physical proximity than others when having a conversation. Now, physical proximity is different depending on what culture you're in. So some cultures, physical proximity is closer than in other cultures, but depending on whatever culture that you are in, narcissists tend to have more physical proximity than in other cultures. They just don't like people around them. They don't like people in their space. They like to have their space because they don't like people in general. They hate people, they hate themselves, and they have resentments about people. They have trouble making contact. They're not comfortable in their skin. So a lot of times they just don't like that. I mean, they are charismatic and they do have that level, but they also aren't comfortable with certain social situations with people in their boundaries, crossing their boundaries. So oftentimes they keep more of a physical proximity than others when in conversation. Those are some of the ways to spot a narcissist in body language. And as I said, only 7% of our communication is actually the words coming out of our mouth. 93% of our communication is other things, tone of voice, body language, that sort of thing. So it's really, really important.
All right. They're charming, they're magnetic, but wait, what does their body language reveal? Today, we're diving into the secret world of narcissistic body language, exposing the hidden clues that tell us that maybe you're dealing with a narcissist and unmasking their hidden body language. So, did you know, of course, something like 70% of our language, what we actually communicate, is actually body language, not just the words coming out of our mouth. And so I want to unlock the secrets today. So welcome to another episode where we decipher the world of dealing with toxic people in a powerful way, and where I help you shift that dynamic so that you can become the most powerful one in dealing with the high conflict people in your life. And if you're new here, I'm so glad that you're here. I'm Rebecca Zung. I am a negotiation and high conflict expert. I'm also an attorney. I've written a best-selling book, a national bestseller, Slay the Bully, How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win. And I invite you to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so that you can be caught up every single time and learn how to shift that power dynamic too. And for those of you who are coming back, welcome back. It is time in this episode where we decipher the unspoken, the unwinding, and unwinding the threats of narcissists so that you know the nonverbal cues and reveal the concealed emotions and thoughts that narcissists don't want you to know. They put on this mask, right? And they make themselves look perfect for you at the beginning. They get you into their web, and then they start to make your life a living hell. We're going to look into the physical and the other kinds of cues that they may give that they don't necessarily want you to know, right? Signs that you may overlook unless you know what they are. So remember that body language, just like any language, has its own sort of dialects in different countries and different cultures. So I do want to make sure we put that into, I mentioned that. And, sometimes things can be inadvertent. If I mention sort of a scratching of the head, sometimes, you actually might just have an itch on your head. So, you need to kind of approach some of these things with a little bit of an open mind. And sometimes it can be just, you have to take things as a whole, right? So the first one is pursed lips. When you kind of flatten your lips together like this, especially if it's in response to a question, like that. And where you can see a really good example of this was when Lance Armstrong was asked if he had been doping. Right away, he gestured like, and you knew that he was about to lie because he was, he didn't really want to answer. And a lot of times when we're withholding and we don't really want to have to answer, and, even narcissists, they'll just purse their lips for a quick moment, and you'll see that flatlining, that pursing of the lips, and even if it's just for a split second, it's just because they don't want to have to answer. They're literally trying to hold something in. So whether it's a lie, like when Lance Armstrong was quizzed about whether he was doping, or it's a subtle attempt for concealing some disdain, it's that little sign that speaks volumes about what's happening beneath the surface. And remember, context is key. One little signal alone doesn't necessarily define a narcissist, but it could mean that somebody is lying. Okay. Another one is sudden distancing behavior. So suddenly, especially, if you see you're in a negotiation or you're having a conversation with somebody and you see somebody immediately step back. And a good example of this was it with Russell Crowe in his BBC radio interview, where he was retreating, and he abruptly distanced himself from the situation. They were poking and nagging at him about his vulnerabilities, and he immediately took off. So be aware of those, who immediately remove themselves, physically remove themselves, or it could be just a slouching, sitting back because they just want to physically be back away from that situation. The going gets tough. It may be a defensive mechanism. worth exploring. Somebody just, doesn't want to have the conversation anymore. I'm not saying that Russell Crowe is necessarily a narcissist, but if somebody's, distancing themselves, they don't want to have that conversation, they don't want to be poked at because of their vulnerabilities, that's, a sign that, something's going on. A red flag might be, should go up maybe for you. Increased blink rates. A Britney Spears interview, right before she went her conservatorship took place. And again, I'm not saying that she's a narcissist. I'm saying that, there was something going on for her that she didn't want to have to reveal. And, she was asked about things that were going on in her life. She was facing tough questions right at that time, and her blink rate noticeably increased. And it's a common response to stress, and it's a subconscious act of not wanting to reveal something. And so you're kind of like shutting out stimuli that's happening out here, going within in a way. So it's not necessarily something bad happening, but it could indicate something more manipulative going on in certain contexts. So again, you want to take all of these things together, and it could mean something. The next sign is avoiding eye contact. So in this particular instance, Kanye West was, the notorious Kanye West was supremely confident most of the time. But in this particular instance, he was in an interview and he's delving into there's sensitive topics. And all of a sudden, he's like refusing to have any eye contact with his interviewer. Right. So, when you look at him and, Mr. Confident refused to have any eye contact. And you can see this many times in other interviews too. Now, again, this is something where, if there's different cultures, some cultures, eye contact actually is a sign of disrespect. So, you have to take into account what culture you're looking at too. Right. So the next one is fidgeting. And, I've seen this in my own practice where somebody starts fidgeting during a deposition, or fidgeting on the stand, or fidgeting in a negotiation of some sort. Somebody starts to move around, they start fidgeting, playing with their hair, they start playing with their hands or something. It can be a sign that they're nervous. It could be a sign that they're cold too, but it could be a sign that they're nervous. So you can look at different interviews, such as when um, Robert Pattinson was uh, frequently playing with his hair, and wardrobe adjustments during the twilight days, unsettled demeanor, discomfort, can just mean something, right? Stiffening of the body is the next one. Sudden stiffening. You can see somebody stiffen up when a question is asked, or when a situation happens that they don't like, a rigid posture. So Kristen Stewart, during certain interviews, when she was asked about her personal life, especially, there were certain instances where things were going on in her life that she didn't like, right? You could see her stiffen up. So sudden change in voice pitch, where somebody's voice is in, one pitch, and then all of a sudden it goes to another pitch. This happens especially with guys a lot of times, where they are in one pitch and then goes up to another pitch. There's several other indications, like touching of their face, like the higher their face, they touch on their face. Sometimes that means something. Obviously some sweating, That can mean something, so there's a number of different things that can denote behaviors of discomfort, suddenly crossing of arms, that can mean something as well, but obviously remember that all of these can also be indicators of, maybe just habits that people have, quirks that people have, that sort of thing. But just take them also in context together, because they can also mean something. Incongruent behavior can mean something as well. Somebody is like, absolutely, absolutely, meaning like they're saying yes, but their body is saying no. They're facing this way, toward the door, but supposed to be in a conversation with you, that's incongruent behavior, things like that. There's, a whole bunch of different things that you can be looking at, clues that reveal that something is happening that may be different than what somebody is actually saying to you. So body language can mean that there's a narcissist going on, or somebody's lying to you, you know somebody asks you a question and then they're interrupting you, right? They're not they're they're not listening to you. They're not waiting around to hear the rest of the conversation. They're just looking up. One of my favorite holiday traditions is baking cookies with my daughter. We've done it every year since she was little. And now, even though we're miles apart, I can see those memories come to life again right here on my Aura frame. What if you could give a gift that brings your holidays to life all the time, every single day? And with an Aura frame, you can. I absolutely love how easy it is. You can preload the photos before you ship it as a gift, and then you can actually remotely continue to add to it. It includes photos and videos all for free, and it comes packaged in a beautiful gift box, no price tag. Can't wrap togetherness, but you can frame it with Aura Frame. And for a limited time, you can visit auraframes.com and get $45 off Aura's best-selling cover matte frame, named #1 by Wirecutter, using the promo code Rebecca at checkout. That's auraframes.com. Promo code Rebecca. This exclusive Black Friday Cyber Monday deal is their best of the year, so order now before it ends, and make sure you mention the show when you go to checkout. Terms and conditions apply. What does that look like? How can you spot that liar? How can you spot the red flag and run like the other direction by seeing a narcissist just by their body language, which is so, so powerful, because body language is actually, they say, up to 70 to 93% of all communication that we read or speak is nonverbal. And they estimate that 15% of the population is actually narcissistic or has a personality disorder that lacks empathy now, or another 10% of the population, and maybe there's some overlap there, is actually high conflict. So, we are probably all feeling like we're drowning in people who are difficult or high conflict at this point. So you probably are feeling powerless. You're probably feeling paranoid. You're probably feeling confused. Maybe you're even feeling hopeless, like you can never win. So if you're trying to communicate with people like this, maybe it's a toxic personality, and you want to grab every possible edge that you can, learning how to read body language is so, so powerful. And being aware of the nonverbal cues in narcissists and working them to your own advantage is so, so critical. Why not have every possible edge that you can, right? The nonverbal is this part that people don't often talk about. And I, as an attorney, have always been looking for whatever edge I can get whether it's been in trials that I was doing or now with my high conflict negotiation certification program that I have. I'm looking for whatever competitive edge that I can get with that I can spot that other people won't necessarily spot. What kind of cues can I look for? What kind of nonverbal cues can I look for? And body language is such a powerful place that we can go that other people aren't necessarily looking for. So what is body language necessarily? It's a tone of your voice. It's the physical space that you're taking up. And narcissists are going to pick up on these things and look at these things, right? So the very first thing that you can look at with a narcissist is how they mirror. They're going to mirror you because they understand that, especially with a grandiose narcissist. They've been reading people from the beginning, when the time that they were children. And so they know how to pick up on your body language. They thrive on attention, they thrive on validation. So they often resort to grandiose movements and exaggerated expressions, especially those grandiose narcissists. They love to command that spotlight. It's their way of asserting dominance and reinforcing their inflated need to have that attention, their feeling of self-worth from external sources. So a lot of times, especially for a grandiose narcissist, you'll see big, huge, grand gestures, big, huge movements. Especially for a grandiose narcissist, you see big movements for them. For other types of narcissists, what you will see is a lack of eye contact. They have a lack of empathy. It's difficult for them to make eye contact. It's difficult for them to see you. It's fleeting. It's definitely very, very fleeting for them. And they view empathy as weakness a lot of times. So they rarely exhibit that authentic compassion toward others. And in fact, they try to feign interest. They look to see what the cues are from other people because they know that they're supposed to do this. And so they look to see what's the minimum amount that I'm going to have to do. And just to show that I'm doing something and feign it to the level that they think that they have to or whatever, just enough to see what the situation calls for. That lack of eye contact is what you're going to want to be looking for, that fleeting amount of eye contact. So just observe that eye contact, or the lack thereof, right? And observe how much vulnerability you see in their eyes. A lot of times you see these black eyes. You hear about narcissists having black eyes, dark eyes, gray eyes, because they struggle to have that vulnerability or that eye contact with people. So they resort to brief, superficial contact with the other person, evasive eye contact. The next one you're going to see a lot of times with narcissists is what I call incongruent body language. A lot of times you'll see them maybe nodding their head or shaking their head when their mouths are saying something else. So they might be saying something like, absolutely, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. Their head is saying no while they're saying yes. And so they're saying, yes to an agreement, but their head is saying no. So you're seeing incongruent language to something, or incongruent body language to what's coming out of their mouth. And another way of showing something is their bodies might be facing a door while they are looking at you. So they're kind of like demonstrating that they're kind of out the door while they're looking at you. So they're not really paying attention to what you are saying, not really paying attention to what you're saying while you're having a conversation with them, not being fully engaged in a conversation with you. That's another way of knowing that you are dealing with somebody that's not present or doesn't have empathy with you. Those are just a few ways that you can tell that you are dealing with a narcissist, somebody who is definitely not engaged with you. You can tell by their body language as far as lying, how much they're touching their face, how high they are on touching their face, a lot of face touching. Now, sometimes people are just touching their face because maybe they have an itch on their face or something like that. A lot of times you have to kind of decode what's going on in the situation as well. You have to look at a lot of different things. Like I say, sometimes, maybe people really are just uncomfortable, in their chair, and maybe that's why they're sitting the way that they are, or maybe they're touching their face because they actually have an itch on their face. So you kind of have to look at the entire situation. It's not just, oh, well, that person happens to be a liar, but you have to kind of weigh all of it together. Maybe they twitching their eye because they happen to have something in their eye, right? Understanding subtle cues can be so important. I urge you to look into all of this. There's so much that you can look into as far as how to decode body language, how to disarm narcissists. And I really urge you to arm yourself with as much knowledge and awareness as you possibly can. I have a whole course on this, honestly, and really understanding these subtle cues and manipulative tactics can really help you reclaim your power and help you navigate high conflict situations with clarity, with confidence. And remember that all of this will help you along the way. Each time you have a little bit more power, a little bit more power, a little bit more power, it helps you get that edge over that high conflict personality, over that narcissist, over that toxic person, and you gain that one more pearl.
So today we're talking about a critical topic, how your body warns you about the narcissist. Have you ever been in a situation that you felt that gut-wrenching feeling? Or maybe you feel sick to your stomach, maybe you have rashes, your hair is falling out. All of that is in response to the stress that you're dealing with in your life. We're going to talk about first why your body reacts to narcissists, and then we're going to go into what you can do about it as well. Our bodies are incredibly intuitive. They pick up on things that our minds might not be willing to process or ready to process, but the body always knows. Narcissists are energy vampires. They're emotionally draining, and their behaviors can trigger a fight or flight response in your body. They're master manipulators, and often our bodies recognize that toxic energy before our brains do. You might be in a room with a narcissist and suddenly you feel nervous, or your heart rate starts to increase, your body is reacting, your stomach is tightening, you're experiencing that sinking feeling, maybe you've got sweaty palms. Your subconscious is actually picking up on subtle cues, the microaggressions, the manipulative language, the false charm, and your body is alerting you that something is not right. So if you're at work and a narcissistic colleague walks into the room, you immediately feel that rush of tension in your chest, and suddenly you're feeling uncomfortable for no reason. You maybe don't even know why yet. Your body has already sensed that emotional temperature, and your body starts reacting. Our hearts are actually at least 5 seconds ahead of our brain. So your heart is actually sensing the energy from the other person. And the thing is, your body is brilliantly trying to tell you something, talk to you. It's warning you. It's trying to protect you, but you have to learn to listen to it. Our minds get clouded with confusion, with manipulation, and doubt when you're dealing with a narcissist, but your body never lies. Some of the most common physical reactions that your body might have when you're around a narcissist, signs, these are warnings: tightness in your chest, something that's off, that feeling of tightness, that pressure in your chest, that can be an anxiety response. Narcissists often create high stakes emotional environments, leaving you feeling like you're walking on eggshells. Your body knows that it's unsafe, and the tension shows up in your chest. Imagine you're in a meeting with a narcissistic boss who's suddenly raising their voice or shifting blame onto you. You might feel like your chest is tightening. Sometimes it's because you are triggered by that type of personality. And the wiring in your neuronal pattern started with this when you were a child. But, it knows like, okay, when this happens, that's the stimulus. Here's my response. It's your body warning you that there's a problem here. There's a problem with this person. It's almost like, how dogs have that like sixth sense about people. We also have that sixth sense about people as well. So you get that sinking feeling in your stomach. Your gut is often referred to as a second brain. It's where our body registers intuition. You feel that uneasy sensation or butterflies in your stomach. It's likely a reaction to the narcissist's energy, and you feel it because your gut is trying to tell you that something is off. And over time, by the way, you can develop gastrointestinal issues. We hold negative energy down in the base of our torso, which causes back problems, all kinds of issues. You could get a leaky gut, which causes autoimmune problems. So there's a long-term problem with this as well. And if you're sitting like with a narcissistic family member during the holidays, they're trying to make you feel insignificant or belittled or devalued, and you get that sinking feeling and you know it. I want you to just start right now saying that you can respond and you don't have to react. Just say, I am powerful. I am powerful. And I want you to write that in the comments right now. I am powerful. And if you need phrases for disarming narcissists, get them at disarmthenarc.com, disarmthenarc.com, and join my free private Facebook group, Narcissist Negotiators, with Rebecca Zung as well.
Narcissists have a confession to make, and that is that they are way more afraid of you than you are of them, especially in court cases, mediation cases, or any kind of cases where you have to negotiate with them. But you know what? I have a confession to make too. I'm sick and tired of these people bullying you and making you feel exhausted and paying way too much in attorney's fees and dragging you through the mud. My name is Rebecca Zung, and I'm an attorney. I've been recognized by U.S. News as one of the best lawyers in America. And in fact, I was so sick and tired of these people bullying you that I started studying narcissism so that I could beat them in the courtroom. And now I'm here to make the case so that you can win too. I developed a 4-part proven blueprint that has helped tens of thousands of people take back their freedom, win, and get back their power. And now I'm sharing it with you in a special live event, Outsmart the Narcissist, the 4-part proven plan to take back your power. 4 simple steps, 1 free live event, 1 free hour of your life. That's what stands between you being in hell and you being free. Join me, click the link for Outsmart the Narcissist, the 4-step proven plan to take back your power. Just click the link and let's go.
If you've ever felt a massive headache, maybe you get dizzy, lightheaded, you feel stressed out, confused, disoriented, you can't think clearly, all of that is your mind and body going into overdrive, trying to make sense of it. Our brain wants to know, our brain wants to be able to predict, and you can't always predict narcissistic behavior. Sometimes they're great, they're in love with you, they think life is awesome. And then other times you're the worst person in the world and you're the enemy. It ends up being cognitive overload when they're twisting facts, gaslighting you, and all of the things that they do. How can you listen to your body? When your body is warning you, the first step is to acknowledge the signals. Listen to your body. Those physical responses are often more accurate than your thoughts. So here's how you can protect yourself. Take a step back for one thing. If you feel that anxiety, that discomfort in your body, give yourself some space. Step away from the situation and take a moment to collect your thoughts. Don't let the narcissist energy manipulate you into staying in an uncomfortable situation. Your body knows what it needs. Set boundaries. If you're experiencing physical symptoms from a narcissist behavior, it's time to set boundaries. Say no. When you put up emotional and physical boundaries, your body is immediately going to start to relax. You're all of a sudden, you're going to be able to breathe more clearly. You're going to be able to think more clearly. You're going to be able to respond instead of reacting. Narcissists can't thrive if you stop playing their games. Ground yourself. Grounding techniques like deep breathing, walking outside, or even just focusing on something that centers you will help calm your nervous system. Try to get out of your head and into your body. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the narcissist, get some distance and reset yourself, reset your energy. Make sure you have a good vibe tribe, you have a good community. I have an amazing community in my high conflict negotiation coach community. Part of the reason why we've created that is because we need to have that supportive team, that vibe tribe. And you can consult with professionals. I have a lot of coaches on my team. If you need that, you can always reach out to us, talk to a therapist, talk to a professional. Chronic stress really takes a nasty toll on your physical and emotional well-being. Your cortisol levels go up. It can cause your A1C levels to go up, which is, pre-diabetic. There's all sorts of things that can happen. You want to develop mechanisms, tools that you can have in your arsenal so that when you get triggered, you know exactly what to do and you can protect yourself long term. So remember to get my Disarm the Narc phrases guide. It's packed with ready to use phrases that can help you disarm a narcissist and stop them in their tracks. That will be a game changer for you. Remember that your body is an incredible tool that can protect you from narcissistic manipulation and emotional abuse. By learning to recognize the signs your body is giving you, you can create a safer environment for yourself, both mentally and physically.
How to tell if your spouse is cheating, which for our listeners is a big deal. People find that their spouse, not just lie about cheating, but they lie about money, they lie about all sorts of things. So, how to tell if your spouse is lying is really, really important for people. And I think it's a hot topic that people will be very, very interested in. So we wanted to talk about those golden nuggets that you give for how to tell if your spouse is lying. The first tip is that your other spouse sounds a little funny. Can you tell us about that?
Well, you want to pay attention to their tone and pitch. So over 85% of us, when we're deceptive, we have a change in our tone and pitch. When our tone goes down, like Britney Spears, when Britney Spears was being interviewed by Matt Lauer 2 weeks before she filed for divorce from her husband at the time, Kevin Federline, Britney Spears' voice went down really soft and said, no, our marriage is totally fine. As she rubbed her leg all the way down to her ankle in this interview, my marriage is fine. 2 weeks later, she files for divorce from Kevin Federline. So sometimes the tone will go down. Sometimes the tone goes up, Rebecca. I've already answered this question 2 times. This is ridiculous. You're insane. You're so jealous. This is why you have no friends. This is why your friends never call you. So all of a sudden their tone goes up. And often when their tone goes up, it's because you're getting closer and closer to the truth. So they'll channel anger to back you away from finding the truth and getting too close to the truth. And so this becomes this, it's called gaslighting. If you're not familiar with the term, it's like you're the crazy person. And this term gaslighting is based on a movie called Gaslight from decades ago, where this guy finds treasure in his house and he doesn't want his wife to find it. So he starts blowing out the gas lights. And she's like, I thought that light was just lit. And he's like, no, that light hasn't worked for months. And to make her crazy. Lance Armstrong did this, quite frankly, when people would call him out on taking steroids. Not only did Lance Armstrong then sue you, he won those lawsuits, by the way. There's one particular interview where Lance Armstrong is doing this press conference, and this guy from, I want to say reporter is from Scotland or Ireland, I think he's from Scotland, asks Lance Armstrong a question. And Lance Armstrong answers the question and the guy goes, how come you didn't grant us an interview? And Lance says, aren't you the guy from Scotland? Aren't you the guy that's been saying, I'm the cancer? I'm the cancer in this sport because you think I'm cheating in the sport and taking steroids. You call me a cancer, and I'm here trying to fight to save money, raise money for cancer awareness, to make a difference. And you had the audacity to say, I'm the cancer in the sport. You're not worth the wood you're sitting on that chair. And so what this is Lance Armstrong is literally raising his tone and pitch and gaslighting that guy, when later we find out what? Lance Armstrong was lying all the time. So when you hear that.
I was going to say, how many years later was he sitting on Oprah's sofa?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're asking someone a question, ask me if I've ever taken heroin, guys.
Have you ever taken heroin?
No. I don't have to oversell. Truthful people convey, liars try to convince. So pay attention to that tone change. If all of a sudden there's this either increase in anger or there's this increase in sadness, and their voice goes soft.
Say that again, what you just said. That's a really good. Yeah.
So if there's this increase in
No,
anger.
truthful people.
Truthful people convey, liars try to convince. So they'll oversell their story to convince you.
That is a good one, because I think I've noticed that as well. You know, as divorce attorneys, I think Rebecca and I have been lied to a couple of times in our lives, right to our faces, as a matter of fact.
By our clients.
By our own clients, exactly. And you do start to pick up some clues on it. Besides that change in pitch, I know another thing that you say is that people slip in verbal cues, which, you know, that sounds like it rings a bell for me, but can you tell our listeners a little bit more about verbal cues?
So there's several here. I know this is going to sound strange, but I know you think I'm making this up, but I know you think I'm lying, but I know you're going to think I'm not telling the truth, but so I say liars, we're watching your big butts. Pay attention to the butts. I was on a show called The Big Idea with this guy who I love, Donnie Deutsch. I don't know if you know Donnie Deutsch. So Donnie Deutsch, he had a show on CNBC called The Big Idea. And I had Donnie sit down, and he told 3 stories. So the first question was, and he randomly picked out of my hand 1, 2, or 3. And whichever number he picked, he had to lie on that story. So he couldn't be prepared for which story would be the lie. So I said, pick 1, 2, or 3, whatever number you pick, that will be your lie. And then I asked him 3 random questions. So the first question was, the first place you ever lived away from home. He said sleepaway camp, and the second place was college. The second question was, what drives you mad? What drives you crazy? What drives you mad? And he said, people who are cheap, people who are late, and people who smell bad. And he said, you know, not so much, I mean, people who are cheap, it just drives him, you know, it irritates him. But people who are late, which I'm always late, as Rebecca can tell you, case in point today, it's like always one thing after another. People who are late drive him, that's his like biggest pet peeve on planet Earth. So he tells me that. The third question is the nicest thing someone ever said to you. And he said to me, literally right out of the gate, he said, the nicest thing someone ever said to me was, my father told me I remind him of his father. I know that sounds strange, but that doesn't sound strange. Why would you throw a but in there? If anything, that sounds completely normal. So his father said, you remind me of my dad. Why is that strange? I know that sounds strange, but. So before I even get any body language, immediately out of the gate, I'm suspicious of story 3. Because he threw in that big but. The but didn't belong there. He didn't say but there. Hey, the first place I ever lived away from home was sleepaway camp, and then I went to college. I know that sounds strange, but those are the 2 places I've lived. He didn't say it in the second story, the things that drive him nuts. He only said it here, and it totally makes sense. The nicest thing my father ever said is I remind him of his father. The fact that he added the but right there is suspicious to me. There's other verbal indicators, and one of them is character testimony. So character testimony is, just ask my friends. They'll tell you I'm not a cheater. Just ask my friends. They'll tell you I'm not smoking anymore. Just ask my boss. Ask my boss on the trip. If I went out at all without the group on the business trip, just ask my boss. He'll tell you I was with the group the whole entire time. So this is character testimony. Herman Cain, I don't know if you remember Herman Cain. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
He ran for president a couple of years back, and I loved Herman Cain because he was so fun to watch for a detecting deception expert, because he gave character testimony in the third person about himself. Kind of like Bob Dole used to say, Bob Dole, you know, Bob Dole would always say, Bob Dole doesn't think this is a good idea. Well, this guy, Herman Cain, running for president, he was charged with like sexual harassment charges came up against him. Not charges, but, you know, people came forward.
Allegations.
Yeah, allegations.
There's a lawyer word.
There's a lawyer word. Thank you, lawyers. So he said Herman Cain would never do something like that. And Herman Cain is not the type of man. And I'm like, dude, Herman Cain is giving character testimony for himself. So anytime you're confronting your significant other and they start giving character testimony, your BS barometer should start to go crazy.
That and the butts, right?
That and the butts. And
other
things like, I knew this was going to happen. I knew you were going to ask me this. I knew this was going to happen. Or they'll say, what kind of person do you think I am? Are you calling me a liar? Are you calling me a liar? Why are you asking blah, 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 the same question? This is ridiculous. You're embarrassing yourself. So again, that goes into, these types of statements go into that, trying to make you think that you're crazy, trying to make you gaslight you. So be careful of people. You confront someone and all of a sudden you feel like you're the idiot. You're like, wait a minute, am I insecure? Mammals, out of all mammals, the only mammal on planet Earth to override our gut instincts are human beings. A wolf never walks down the street or through the woods and says, I think I have a bad vibe. That lion over there looks dangerous. I'm overanalyzing it. And then walks by the lion. It's us, human beings. We override our gut instinct, and we can be, especially us women, we can be manipulated pretty easily because here's the deal. When someone is lying to us, your husband or your significant other, here's the deal. If they have any power at all, and this could be they're very handsome, they have a successful job, they pay the bills, they manage the accounts. You may make more money, but they manage all the accounts. If they have any position of power in your relationship and in your marriage, here's what happens when they lie. When they lie to you, they have a focus on the rewards of lying. They have a focus on the rewards. The everyday liar that lies to you, they focus on the consequences. But your significant other, when they lie, if they are in a position of power at all in your relationship, I'm telling you, they're focusing on the rewards. That's number one. Number two, there's 4 things that happens with them. 1, they focus on the rewards. 2, in the moment of lying to you, they get off on it, ladies. So what happens is they have an increase in cognitive thinking, which means that when one lie doesn't work, they can tell another lie really quickly. With ease, like this. You're like, wait a minute, you told me you were with Mike. Oh, no, I didn't mean Mike. I meant Jeff. Sorry, it was Mike a couple weeks ago. And they're so fast. You're like, there's no way they could lie because they got it so quickly, because they have that ability to have an increase in cognitive thinking. And why is that? In a moment of a powerful person lying, they have a decrease in cortisol. The everyday liar has an increase in cortisol, right? That hormone that's connecting with stress. They have a decrease in cortisol. They're getting off on it. And the last thing is the powerful liar has an increase in positive emotions. So when you say to your husband, did you see your ex-girlfriend last night at that party? Because a friend of mine was there and she told me that Michelle was there. And he's like, what? I love you. What? I love you. So understand, they have an increase in positive emotions. What are you talking about? Honey, I love you. And they're so happy. Be concerned when you see this. And we're all powerful liars. If you've ever told your kid there's a Santa Claus, and you're we can't go to Grandma and Poppy's house because they don't have a fireplace. And what do? You slap a smile on your face. What? Oh, you're right. You have an increase in cognitive thinking. Oh, I didn't know how to tell you this, but Santa, just like he gives the magic dust to the reindeers to fly, he puts magic dust around Grandma and Poppy's house, and the house lifts up and Santa crawls underneath. Your kid doesn't believe that lie. What do? You slap a smile on your face again. You go, okay, Santa shrinks down to the size of a keyhole with all the presents. Your kid doesn't buy that. What do?
That reminds me of that Dirty John thing. Did you see that Dirty John thing? Because it was this podcast series that had gotten like 10 million downloads in like the first 6 weeks or something. Yeah. And then they ended up making it into a Netflix movie. And we actually interviewed Lily Vasilev, because she has put together some points about how to prevent that from happening to you. But it was this guy who was a master at getting women to pay for everything for him. They would isolate. Well, he ended up being murdered by her daughter.
You just gave away. Oh no!
Give it away for people. But
spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. But he was such a master at getting this very successful woman to do whatever he wanted. Wow. And she said, like, he said he was a doctor, and then they found his nursing degree, and he came along and said, well, I have a nurse anesthetist doctorate, and that's like a doctor, and that's why I am a doctor. And she believed it. And she said he would have something to say for everything, and it all sounded plausible, which is exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Right. And and think about it, when, like, if you're telling your kid about Santa or the Easter Bunny or the Tooth Fairy, you focus on the rewards. You have an increase in positive emotions. You have an increase in cognitive thinking, and you don't stress out. As a matter of fact, you're proud of yourself when you finally came up with, okay, I leave the back door open for Santa. Don't tell Grandma coffee. You know, and your kid buys it, and you're like, you call all your friends, you're like, listen, I came up with 4 answers. I'm like a rock star. So we're all powerful liars. If you can think in your marriage, if you're getting a divorce, if you're separated, and they have a position of power, this is happening right now with a relative of mine that got a divorce attorney, right? I helped pay so he wouldn't know that she already got a divorce attorney because he monitored all the finances, right? So she paid me back later. I wasn't in a hurry for the money. She paid the money so he wouldn't know. Guess what? Once she serves the papers to file for divorce, he convinces her, now they're using a moderator. Well, now this divorce, supposed divorce, is now going on, I don't know, 6 months, and nothing is happening, and it's chaos, and he's calling all the shots, and there's kids involved. The whole thing is a big mess. And now he convinced her to get rid of the lawyer. So all that money was, and it's crazy. So she's crying and stressed every single day because he convinced her that the lawyers are not a good option. All they're going to do is raise your money and give you a big bill. Use a mediator. And I'm not knocking mediators. Maybe there's a time and a place for that. But this is a disaster.
Well, that's a normal thing that control freaks do, though. They try to get rid of, even if it's a consulting attorney, which we always say that, having a consulting attorney or a coach is a good idea. But that's what they do. They convince the person that you don't need that person because they want to get anyone else who might have control over that person out of the picture.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, the lawyer themselves, when we went in, it's a female lawyer. And when we went in, I went in and met with the lawyer as well. And I had a list of questions. And the lawyer, this is my friend. My friend's husband wrote a list and said, hey, when we get divorced, here's what I get. Here's what you get. He writes this list.
They always do that.
My friend goes, well, that looks fair. And we bring it into the lawyer. She goes, there's 6 red flags in this list. And my friend's like, what do you mean there's 6 red flags? I go, this is why you get a lawyer. And so we went in. One of the things was he has all this property. And he said, well, there's no way that we can find out how much money this property is all worth. So I'll take all that property and you'll get none of that. Like, you don't need any of that. I'll take the hassle of it all. And she's like, no, you can get property because multiple people own the property. Like, there's a team of families that own it. He's like, there's no way you could figure it out. Of course there's a way you figure it out. That's ridiculous. But my friend was like, well, it makes sense. No, it doesn't.
Oh, they always come in with that spreadsheet of like, I've done this and you're getting the left-hand side and never mind that the right-hand side that I'm keeping tallies a little bit more money. It's
oh, do they do that, huh? Is that typical?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I see it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the other things you mentioned is the person's face flashes contempt. I want you to talk about that, but also I remember that you said something about like when people lie, something happens with their physiological, and that's why their nose starts itching and things like that. You can talk about that a little bit too.
Okay, so see this look? I'm doing contempt while you brought it up. So do this, ladies. Okay, so that's moral superiority. Let me see, Susan. Let's see it. Oh, yeah, you're good at it. Oh, yeah, you got Rebecca. Oh, no, Rebecca's a monster. So contempt is moral superiority. Now, contempt belongs there, ladies. If someone gets an award, right? Your husband comes home and he gets this big award and this big trophy, and he's like the top salesperson of the year. It belongs there because it's moral superiority. It's like he's saying, like, you're damn right, I won the award because I worked my butt off. The problem with contempt is where you're confronting them. Hey, are you on Twitter with a fake Twitter handle? And then writing to like these women, like whores online on Twitter and commenting under your fake handle? And your husband's like, no, what are you talking about? I don't even use Twitter. And then contempt pops up. Contempt is moral superiority. When you see contempt as well, so contempt is usually done by the master manipulator. So someone in the position of power will leak that contempt. So we saw people like Ted Bundy leaked contempt. We saw Scott Peterson, who murdered his wife, pregnant wife Lacey Peterson, and unborn son Connor. Even with interviewing with him, you see contempt, moral superiority. O.J. Simpson. So people in a position of power. If you're married to a husband that maybe doesn't have a lot of power, right? So you might see this one. So they'll do this, or they'll ventilate. So men will go like this with their hand, with their hair.
So like brush it back.
Yeah. So think our brain is inside here. So when there's a spike in stress and anxiety, the higher the stress and anxiety, the higher this self-touch gesture will happen. It's called a guy named Joe Navarro, retired FBI agent, calls them pacifiers. Like a newborn baby uses a pacifier to comfort themselves. A guy named Dr. Paul Ekman calls them manipulators. I call them self-touch gestures. They're all the same. So the higher the self-touch gesture, the more of a spike in stress and anxiety. So you're confronting your significant other, with whether you're married to a man or a woman, and they are doing this. That's an increase in stress and anxiety. The one. So
I just want to explain for our listeners who can't see what you're doing, that you're rubbing your arm or rubbing your hand over the top of your head, just so that they understand that these are the gestures that you're talking about.
Yes, and so the ventilating one is when usually done by men, where they make their hand almost into a comb, and they go from the forehead back to their hair, and they ventilate. So this is literally letting steam off their scalp because there's such stress and anxiety. So us women, when we're stressed, so if you're in a same-sex marriage, and you're confronting her, your wife, your palm will go from your neck to the top of your head. So you'll see women do this. We lift our hair up from the nape of our neck. And the more you see them do this, the higher the stress and anxiety is. So if you see women, and this is even if you're not getting divorced, you're in a negotiation. Rebecca and I just did this negotiation course. So you're in a negotiation, women will tend to go from the nape of the neck up, and we bent our hair, we let our hair out. So we're going from the nape of the neck up. And men will go from the top down. This is a very good point here. So your powerful liars will leak contempt. Your not powerful liars will often do these ventilating moves. Also, if someone is nodding their head, yes, and I didn't give this to Oprah Magazine, but I'm going to give it to you guys, Rebecca and Susan, and your listeners and your viewers, is if someone is shaking their head, yes, we walk out of that negotiation with the moderator or with the attorney or whoever, with your therapist, if you're going to family therapy or couples therapy, and your husband goes, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I'll make sure I tell our, oldest son to respond to your text messages. I'll make sure. And your husband or your significant other's nodding yes. I'm here to let you know, or you're in a negotiation. If someone nods their head yes, we think it's agreement. The problem is if there is a pacifier at the same time, it actually turns from agreement to disagreement. And again, a pacifier is a self-touch gesture. I'm rubbing my arm, I'm rubbing my leg, I'm doing this ventilating with my hair, I'm going up from the nape of my neck. Anytime a piece of our body touches another piece. So someone's saying, yeah, yep, that sounds good, but they're rubbing their forehead or rubbing their throat. Yeah, okay, I'll make sure that happens. Yes, I'll go to couples therapy. I'll go to sex therapy. I'll go to rehab for sex therapy. I won't cheat on you again. And you see them nodding yes, but they're grabbing their throat at the same time or rubbing their leg. Understand? That has taken agreement to disagreement, and no one's told us this. And we walk out and we think we're on the right page. We're fixing our marriage. And then you're blindsided because your husband said yes, yes, yes to the therapist, or yes, yes, yes to the moderator, mediator, whoever, to you. And he didn't do what he said. And you're blindsided. You're like, I don't understand. He said yes in the therapy session. Like I watched him. No, he has given you the nonverbal indicator of nodding his head yes, but the pacifier at the same time indicates right in front of your eyes, ladies, disagreement. You just missed it because no one ever taught you what to look for.
So
cool, right?
Yeah, well, now that we know it,
right?
But it also, I think that I think it's fascinating. You're internationally known as a body language expert, and I have noticed since my practice has moved online. So everybody, when I first started doing mediations online, everyone thought, oh, it's going to lose something in the translation because we're not in the same room. But I've actually found that since you can see each other, and it's almost amplified since you're all on the screen, that the body language still comes through quite strongly. And it's almost enhanced. And you said in that article about body language that the other person sort of seems like they're trying to run and hide. And I've noticed that phenomena even on a screen. So what do you mean by that, or can you describe it for our listeners?
We'll say it again. What was the tip?
The trying to run and hide. So when the body sort of feels like it's, you know, the other person's body is trying to run and hide.
Yeah. So, and this can show up in different ways, but the moral of the story is from this whole interview is you always want to look for someone's baseline. And when their baseline changes, that's where suspicion lies. So if I'm really confident and I'm taking up space, if you were to see me right now, you'd see my left arm is up on my chair that I'm sitting at. I'm taking what's called a broadside display. I'm taking up space. And all of a sudden I get really small. Think of like a Far Side cartoon. I like Far Side. Back in the day, I'm an 80s kid, 48. So
As we all are.
Yeah.
yes. So these Far Side cartoons, like the bear would have like a red target on him and he'd get really, really small, or point to the bear next to him so the person with the gun could go shoot that bear. So we implode. We sometimes do turtling. Turtling is where the shoulders kind of pull up and our head pulls down. You'll see this with people who shoplift. So shoplifters, when they go in and they're looking around, before they steal, will often turtle. And turtling, just imagine the turtle's head going back into its shell. The shoulders will rise up, and so you'll see someone sitting here like this. They're trying to become a smaller target and not be seen versus taking up space. So sometimes people will lean away. I call this the belly button rule. The belly button rule is we face our belly button towards people we like, admire, and trust. We also face our belly button and our feet in the direction we want to head. So if you're talking to someone, I talked about this on Dr. Oz one time for a divorce segment, ironically, and you're talking to your significant other and they suddenly adjust in their seat, and if you could see me on video, you'd see I just turned. My belly button is now facing a door and exit. I subconsciously want out of there. So I will literally physically turn my belly button towards the door and exit. I have a friend, Terry Moore, in New York City, and she always says to her husband, his name's Nikolai, "Hey, Nikolai, my belly button is facing the door. You know what that means? Let's go, buddy. My belly button's out of here. Let's wrap it up."
Get behind the belly.
Yes. So watch for that change in the baseline. Watch for when people shrink. Or again, remember, some liars convince instead of convey. So some liars will get opposite and they'll take up space and try to be really confident and start doing steepling, which is like prayer hands. We see Oprah do this steepling move. It's literally like the steeple on a church. They'll try to overcompensate, but they have nothing to hide.
It's a power move. I learned that.
Yeah.
That and the chin grab.
Yes. When we grab our chin, we're about to win.
Is that good? Okay, because I do that a lot. Is that a good thing to do?
Yeah,
or
It's a good thing.
Oh, good.
Now, if you are dealing with a covert narcissist or any kind of narcissist, whether they're overt or grandiose or malignant or covert is what we're going to be talking about today, or a combination of any of the kinds of narcissists, then you're dealing with a hellish personality, a heinous personality. But there are some things about covert narcissists that can make them even more insidious than the other types of narcissists. And for those of you who have watched my other videos, which you will want to check out on covert narcissism in relationships and the covert passive aggressive narcissist, and I'll drop links to those below, you know that I have a personal experience with dealing with covert narcissists. Not as husbands, but as people who were close to me who I became the target of these heinous creatures. So this is the kind of narcissist that I personally disdain the most. So in some ways, this is like my PSA, my public service announcement to warn you against these personality type or this personality type and what to look for in this personality type. So one of the things that you should know about covert narcissists is that they are 100% narcissists. So they have what Dr. Craig Malkin calls the triple E, which is that they exploit, they feel entitled, and they lack empathy. So they still are all 100% narcissist, like all narcissists are. And the other little kind of dangerous thing about covert narcissists is that they can sometimes be grandiose narcissists that act covert, which is kind of confusing too. You know, sometimes these different types of narcissists actually vacillate back and forth between the the various signs of the types of narcissists they are. But what I'm going to be talking about today is actually more of your pure covert narcissist, which is the kind that I've actually had to deal with, and why I think that they're so dangerous. Because, you know, if I could be fooled, then anybody can be fooled. And I really just had to literally work these people out of my life in the last year. So, and it was not easy. And they still try to pop back up and pop back in, because that's what narcissists do. They never really let go. They never really um, move on completely. You know, sometimes it can be years before they pop back up again, but that you can kind of minimize it and protect yourself in a lot of ways. And that's why I'm doing this video, because I want you to know the signs of abuse. Okay. So the thing about covert narcissists is that they don't look on the surface like regular narcissists. Regular narcissists, what I call the garden variety narcissist, is more of your grandiose varietal, that kind of goes around telling everybody how great they are all the time. Covert narcissists don't do that. And that's one of the things that I think is so dangerous about them, is that on the surface, they appear very nice. They appear like good people. Lots of people love them. They can be politicians. They can be clergy. They can be lawyers, doctors. They're often in positions of respect because, of course, they're narcissists. They feed on that respect. Remember that the narcissist actually has no inner sense of internal value. They get all of their sense of value from the external. They need endless amounts of what we call supply, which is anything that feeds their ego, anything that feeds their external value or their feeling of external value. So supply can be in the form of money, compliments, prestige, anything that they think is going to give them more value. So here's the problem with a covert narcissist, and one of the things that is so dangerous about them is you're not going to hear them say, I'm the greatest, look at my ratings, look how fantastic I am, I'm so smart, I'm the number one this, I'm the number one that, you know, without anything to back it up. They just go around saying all of those things because they feed on that. They need to have it. Okay. So what a covert narcissist is more likely to do is put themselves in positions where they're going to get all of that, but they're not actually going to have to say it, you know, overtly. And so we're told that, you know, narcissists are brash, braggadocious, loud, assertive. Well, the thing is that covert narcissists don't come in that format. They're usually much nicer. They start off by, you know, giving you lots of things. That their version of love bombing is often being the perfect person for you. And, you know, they can put you in positions that you want to be in, or give you speaking engagements that you think that you want, or introduce you to the person that you want to be introduced to, or they're the perfect cook or the perfect mother, or, you know, whatever it is that you want. This person just seems so nice and so wonderful. And yes, malignant narcissists can do that too, but the difference with uh, covert narcissists is that they don't come off that way, you know, where they're loud and braggadocious and flashy. They come off as really nice, sometimes even quiet, sometimes passive, sometimes demure. So that's one of the things that I think is super dangerous about covert narcissists. One of the other things that I think is really dangerous about covert narcissists is that they come off looking very successful often on the surface. And, grandiose and malignant narcissists can do this too, but grandiose narcissists come off as super ambitious, super successful, whereas the covert narcissist is often, they make it look like they've had that sort of success, but if you look just beneath the surface, they haven't actually gotten that success. And so they have a lot of bitterness and resentment about the fact that, everybody else has more success than they do. And, that their failures are other people's faults because, you know, something happened with their business, or this person sabotaged them in some way, or maybe they were just getting going and they had to close their business, or they had to move, or something happened, and so they have all of these sort of failed ambitions and feeling of emptiness, and they often feel have a tremendous sense of depression and emptiness, and sometimes they'll even tell you that they have bouts of depression, but they don't tell you it's because of their failures in business. They'll tell you it's just that they have these afflictions, because one of the other things about covert narcissists is they often are very good at playing the victim. All narcissists do that, but the way covert narcissists do it is that they're kind of sad, and people aren't treating them well, and they just didn't get a good lot in life, and um, the world is unfair to them, and so they end up feeling depressed and empty, and they often have sicknesses, um, so that they can get sympathy from people around them, garner lots of pity from people. Oh, so and so's always getting a bad deal. There's a lot of payoff sometimes for being a victim, and a covert narcissist thrives on that payoff from being the victim. So the other thing about covert narcissists that I think is super dangerous is that they're super passive aggressive. And this is the one thing that really was like very confusing for me, and the two passive aggressive narcissists that I had to deal with, the covert ones, is that they would do these little things that on the surface would seem so nice. Oh, here, I did this for you, and but while they're doing this thing for you, they're crossing a boundary, or they don't do something that they say they're going to do, and then when you ask them about it, it's, oh, I forgot, or oh, I misunderstood you, or oh, we had a conversation about that, remember, and we decided to do this, and it's absolutely not something that we decided to do, but it's them trying to make an excuse for behavior that they know has been hurtful to you. And so they try to get you to say that, basically you went along with that. And when you try, and it's little things, it's that little drip, drip, drip on your forehead, little things. In Debbie Mirza's book, The Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist, she gives an example of a husband who would go into Starbucks to get coffee, and the wife would stay in the car, and the husband would say, what do you want, anything? And she'd say, yeah, I'll have, a vanilla latte or whatever. And he'd get back in the car and start to drive away, and she'd say, what happened to my latte? And he'd say, oh, I forgot to get it for you. But then he wouldn't go back into the place to get it. So, and it was like a little thing that if you tell somebody, oh, I didn't get the latte that I wanted, then you come off sounding petty. And you start to think, well, do I blow up a whole marriage over that? I mean, that seems so ridiculous. But what they're really trying to do is send you this message that they think so little of you, or that you're not worthy in some way, because that's how narcissists get supply. They get supply by building themselves up and cutting you down. And so they do these little tiny things that in the surface, if you tell somebody about it, it just doesn't seem like that big of a deal. They're very, very passive aggressive, and it can leave you feeling confused and after a while abused and actually traumatized because of the way they act. And if this is sounding really familiar to you, give me a totally in the comments. Is that they're 100% narcissists, but they are really, really good at being manipulative, very good at hiding their manipulation, very good at disguising it as something else, as disguising it as that, I just, did this little thing for you. And you know that the hair on the back of your neck is standing up like that's not something nice. One of the things that I've heard during this, I'm taping this while we're still in this global pandemic, is, that the covert narcissist in people's lives are leaving food by the door. And that that's like a message of, I know where you live, or I still have control over you, or I know what you want. But the rest of the world is like, oh, the person left you a care package. How is that bad? Why is that? Well, we all know that the person is so nice. We all know that the person is such a good person. So what's your problem? And so while they're lining up their flying monkeys and they're telling everybody, how wonderful they are or how wronged they've been by you, because, oftentimes you actually look like the stronger person because they've put themselves in this light of being the nice, caring, kind person. So you obviously must be the one that is wronging them in some way. And you almost feel paralyzed to, like, how do you even um, right that wrong of what people are thinking about you? And the way I've just come to deal with it is, number one, I have major boundaries. I do not look at what these other people are doing. I don't look at their social media. I've blocked them on my social media so that they can't see what I'm doing and, continue to, have access to what I'm doing. I don't want them to think that I'm interested in what they're doing at all, because I'm not. I just want to look forward, not back. I don't want their energy in my space. I don't want to even be thinking about them. When I go to think, when one of them pops into my mind, I pivot immediately, because the way I look at it is, if I'm thinking about them, then I am not in creation mode. I'm not helping people. I'm not doing things like making these videos and helping you guys so that you can look forward also and concentrate on your now and the rest of your life and creating an incredible future. And so I just learned how to pivot and create major boundaries, because I don't want these people in my space, and you shouldn't have them in there either. So if you have to continue to co-parent with them, or you have to continue to live with them in some way, then, figure out a way to protect yourself so that when they do these things, you're no longer going to be sucked into it. And certainly do not let them see you be upset by their behavior, because then they know that they have you. Then they know that they still have this little modicum of control over you. So here comes more, here comes more. So, the less you can interact, the more you can show that you aren't interested and you direct your energies elsewhere, then that vibrational energy of connection that you still have with that person will eventually peter off and hopefully eventually die. So if you are dealing with a covert passive aggressive narcissist in your life, they can be the most dangerous kind of narcissist, because they are the most sneaky, the most insidious, the most stealth, and in some ways the most toxic, because of how good they are about hiding their narcissism and being under the radar. And so, if that is you, I'm sending you blessings. I'm sending you light from one survivor, thriver to another. You can do this. Just follow the light, get them the hell out of your life, and look at your now and look forward.